much for joining me today here on Investor Spotlight. Today we have special guest Ryan Tole. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Wonderful. How are you?
Doing great. Nice to be indoors, safe
Yeah, I
from
think
the craziness that's going on here in the States.
I know it is. I hope that's not affecting you guys too much.
No, not at all. With technology, it's great. We can all just work from home and keep on going.
It's probably a good thing. We all get to teach our employers that, look, we all can work from home. We really can.
It is possible, yes.
Trust us.
It's going to be a game changer, that's for sure.
Awesome.
So, Ryan, tell me a little bit about your background and what got you into real estate.
Well, I got into real estate, I guess. Well, I was going to school and my professor got me really interested in it. The University of North Texas, his name was John Bain. The guy was, he was nearly in his 70s and he just had a passion every day for sharing everything with real estate related, everything from oil and gas to single family homes. And I thought to myself, well, if that guy is passionate at 70 some odd years old, that's probably what I need to do for a living because he's pretty excited about it still. That's how I got into real estate. He motivated me. I wanted to just be around him and learn everything I could from him. So much so to the point that I went out and bought a couple of homes back when lending was a bit easier. I was still in school. And so as a college kid, I went and used some stated income loans and stated that I make this much money and I'd like to buy this house. And, they let me, so that got me my foot in the door. I've got a couple of houses that way. I understand it's not that easy today, but
yeah, I was gonna say those type of loans really aren't around anymore.
I know it. But you know what they always say, you just got to get a little break somewhere. And for a lot of up and coming investors, sometimes that break is just that mentor. Somebody, like I was saying with that professor, I just said, hey, what can I do? How can I be of help to you just to be able to learn? And if you do that, you're going to get that break. And that's kind of the mentality I went into it with. I used those properties to kind of build, and I owned a small business at the time, a valet parking company that I kind of fell into. That gave me a little bit of cash flow to then convince my mother, who had just retired. She's a school teacher. I said, Mom, I got this idea. Let's buy a couple of distressed houses, because when I graduated, that was all that was out there. Because I graduated from my master's about 06, and there was nothing but distressed real estate. So graduating with a finance and a real estate degree, there wasn't a whole lot out there because the economy was crashing. That's how I got into my first couple of deals.
So you went out there and bought distressed properties, and then did you rehab them and sell them, or rehab them and rent them? What was the strategy at that point?
You know what? Funny story. The first one I bought, because I was in school, I rented it to a couple of fraternity brothers. I rented a couple of rooms out, if you can believe it. And from there, about the time that I did finally graduate, I continued to lease it out to a couple of fraternity brothers. And then I moved into my next home, which I rented a couple of rooms out. And they didn't call it house hacking because this was 13 years ago. So the term house hacking wasn't really around. And then house hacking became like a big thing, a big go-to name tag that they would call it. And I guess that started coming around about 6 years ago. And I thought to myself, gosh, I was doing that 13 years ago.
Yeah, we just didn't call it anything.
Exactly. So if you're young, that's a great way to get started. If you can convince somebody to let you buy a house, and then you can house hack, rent a few rooms out. It flowed a little bit easier because I was in school, I was young, it was easy to live with people. Plus I had a lot of people around me that weren't
needed a place to live.
Exactly. So that's how I got the first one, the first couple actually. And then my first actual flip purchase, which is truly where I became successful, I was introduced to the auction process through that professor I was talking about. So the county trustee sale, I took my mother and I pulled up some money. I think it was like 60,000, And we struck out the first auction, and we struck out the second auction, but on the third auction, we finally got one single family home. We paid $67,000 for it. I think we put 25 into it and sold it for 1.25.
Nice.
That was the eye opener that had a few friends of mine looking around like, hey, this guy might know what he's doing. They then wanted to kind of ask if they could be part of the process. And I said, sure. So I did some kind of joint ventures where I would bring my money and their money to the auction, and we would try to purchase property. And when we did, they would just be like JV'd in on the deal, and we would disperse profits based on that.
That's wonderful. And so now you've been doing this for 12 years. So that was the beginning. What are you doing now? Has your strategy changed, or are you still going to auction and flipping houses that way? What have you learned in between the beginning
Absolutely.
and now?
Well, I still do flip houses with properties from the auction. It's gotten a lot more competitive, though. The margins have gotten quite a bit thinner, but I've diversified. And anybody who's in this business knows that you can't keep doing the same thing all the time. The market's going to change, it's going to become more efficient, and you're going to find people kind of jumping in the same swimming pool as you. So I've started to do some private money lending. Well, let me start from in chronological order. I did the house flipping for a while, and that was always my cash flow. Every business kind of needs to have a cash flow machine, and I would save a little money from every auction and from every sale. And when the perfect rental property came along, I would take down a property and keep it as a rental property. And so I started building a rental property portfolio. That was about the time when the hedge funds were doing a lot of buying.
Mm,
I couldn't really buy properties and successfully sell them for a profit because the hedge funds were buying them up in advance. What they weren't really touching were the older homes that would make good rentals.
mm.
So I built up a good portfolio of rental properties, probably about a dozen. And you know what I did was I got approached by some banks that said, "Hey, do you want to take out any mortgages with us?" And they're small banks. That's who you kind of have to go after. And I said, "Sure. I've got these 12 rental properties." So they bundled those 12 rental properties and gave me $1 million line of credit, which just was like dry ammunition powder
Wow.
to go out
So that just
and
opened huge doors right there. That
yeah,
one transaction that they approached you about.
that's right. That's right. I was referred. They were referred to me, and they called me one day and look, these are referrals that I'd be happy to hand out. And but that's really what kind of blew the doors off. Was I had always shied away from leveraging myself, but using a line of credit and not actually taking the mortgage out allowed me to really control the leverage. In other words, I had control over whether or not the properties, those 12 properties, were going to be leveraged. So while it's a line of credit, right? It's not necessarily a mortgage. I take the money out when I want to take it out.
Mhm. Nice. And so that's your strategy that you've been doing here lately that you're continuing with?
Yes. So I do some flips. I have another 50% of the business is probably rentals. And I've recently started doing some private money lending, um, as well as owner finance. The owner finance is kind of an exit strategy to some of the rental properties, because at some point you're going to hit a terminal velocity with rental properties where you can only manage so many before you got to start hiring a lot of people. It makes a lot more sense to owner finance properties if you can afford to do it with the banks backing you. You know, if you can go out and get those lines of credit, then you can take this property, instead of leasing it, you can owner finance it at 8 to 12%, which is about what you'd make renting it anyways.
So exit strategy is a big part of what you look at whenever you're looking at your particular portfolio. Is that right? And can you expand a little bit more on why those exit strategies are important for investors?
Yes, you need to know where you're going. I'm not saying that I knew exactly where I was going. Some things just kind of fell into place at some point. But if I could reach back down to myself 10 years later, I'd say it's important to have an exit strategy. You don't want to necessarily go out and spend $1 million on 12 rental properties and not know what you're going to do with those. You may decide that 5 years into it, you don't want to be a landlord, but now you're faced with 12 rental properties that are fully occupied, and they're not the easiest thing to sell off. Sure, you can find somebody to instantly buy them, but you're going to take a pretty big hit. So you need to know what direction you're going.
So what's the biggest piece of advice you would have for a new investor that is looking to get into real estate and is looking at different avenues like flips and rentals? How do they decide, which to go after first?
Well, I think you have to look at what is your greatest strength. And if you're a people person and you're really good with sales, then you might want to make yourself available for a guy like me. There's a lot of different ways where you can work with guys that have been in the business. And if you're great with sales, they can add you to their piece of business, show you the ropes. If you're really good with bookkeeping, money management, finances, there's a lot of guys like me that are terrible with those types of things, right? And so they're looking for somebody to take on that role, to maybe take an equitable interest in their business. Say, look, you take care of the legal, the drafting, the paperwork, the purchase, the sales, all that administrative stuff. I want it off my plate. You could take 5% of my earnings. I have an agreement with a CPA who does that. So just be something to somebody, to somebody successful, somebody that you think would that you look up to, and they obviously are sharing some success. That's what I would recommend. Just try to find a place where you can fit in using the strengths that you do have. If you're just a capital provider, maybe you've got a day job, but you've got plenty of capital. Again, you can reach out to somebody who is already doing it, and you can learn the ropes. Just be a part of the business, lend the capital, learn about the business, make that one of your requirements. Mm-hmm. And soon enough, you can start picking up enough experience indirectly, and be sure to work with somebody who's willing to share the trade secrets, that aren't just going to keep their hand close to their chest. If you do that, you want to find somebody who's willing to share that with you. Make sure you don't
Someone
just go
that can
help
be a
somebody
mentor to you.
That's right.
And so you have a website now, ryantole.com. Tell me a little bit about the website and what the purpose is and the goal is, and why someone would reach out to you via website.
So a website, I was never big on websites. In fact, I went 10 years without one. But at some point, people go to a website. I realized that I found myself going to people's website, not because I wanted to give them any business or what have you. It was more so, what is the legitimacy of this person? They say they're successful, they say they're doing this, but it's kind of like a storefront. A lot of us buy online these days, but you still need that brick and mortar somehow, that face, and that's what the website gives. I lease to people without having never met them before. The only way I'm able to do that is because they see my website, they apply on my website, and it gives me a lot of legitimacy. Also, when you're looking to buy and sell properties from individuals who are looking to sell, they're going to want to know, hey, is this guy done any deals? Does he actually close this deal? Is he local? Where are the testimonials? Some people may not want, they're reclusive. They may not want to ask you all those questions over the phone, but they're going to do that homework. They're definitely going to do the homework. So that's what the website does. It doesn't necessarily sell anything, but it gives you a presence in the community. People research you a lot more than you think. And that's what it's going to allow you to be successful through people just checking you out online.
Have you noticed a difference in maybe people contacting you, or the types of deals that you've been making since you've had your website up?
I can't say that the deals have necessarily changed, but I've noticed that things are a lot more fluid, and I can just refer to it. People say, oh, what properties do you have? I can send them to the website. Oh, where can I apply for a lease property? Head to my website. Do you have any referrals? Yes, on my website. If anything, it saves me a lot of work.
Saves you time and work. Yeah, I was gonna say it
I
saves
don't
you a
have
lot
to.
of work, so you don't have to give it out to everybody every single time. It's one
Normally, that
centralized
would be
location with all the information that anyone would need.
exactly. Normally, I'd have to go home. I'd have to make a reminder. I'd have to copy and paste these referrals into an email, but I don't have to do that anymore.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And so now you are up to, was it 15 rentals?
It's actually
No,
25.
76 rentals and
Yeah,
267 flips.
267 flips. Yes,
That is a
that's right.
lot. That
There's a
is a lot.
lot of. In fact, even when I go back and look at it, I have to still look in the county records and actually type in some of my business names to really prove to myself that I did that.
Like, did I
Because
really do this? Yeah. Is this
exactly.
figure right? That's amazing. And so if someone were to go on your website and, get in touch with you, are you open to providing, a little bit of mentorship to those out there that are new?
Absolutely. I love meeting new people because inevitably every person that I usually help, it comes full circle. Somebody's helping me either through a vendor, referral contact, an attorney, a bookkeeper. It always comes back around to help me out. So yeah, I'd love to help people.
Awesome. That is a great story, Ryan. Anything else that you can provide to the community or any tips as people get started here on their real estate journey?
Well, sometimes I get that question a lot. I also encourage people to look at why maybe it's not right for them. I've seen a lot of investors fail. You Some people say, how did you get your start in business? Or I want to start in the real estate business. How can I get started? And I say to them, well, why don't you go look at pouring concrete? And they'll look at me kind of funny, and I say it's just as hard. It's just as hard owning a concrete company, pouring driveways and parking lots as it is running a real estate business. You're still managing people. It's still a business. It's not the romantics that you see on TV. It's a
Yeah,
lot of headaches. It's a lot of work. But I think it boils down to that entrepreneurial spirit. You can become an entrepreneur in real estate a lot faster and easier than a lot of other businesses, but it doesn't mean that the work to get there is any less.
that's awesome. So people really need to dig deep within themselves and figure out, why do I even want to do this?
Yeah.
Why
If
am
you're
I
looking for
am I
an
wanting to
easier
go this
life,
direction?
if you're looking for an easier life, looking to come into the office less, looking to travel more, not that doesn't come until you're 10, 11, 12, 15, 20.
If that, right?
If
As
that,
you add more projects, you fill that time with something else. So
that's right.
so real estate is definitely not the easy way out of life. It's hard work. You have to have a lot of dedication, and then we can all be in the positions that you're in.
That's right. Well, that's right, and it's not you're not going to get it right on your first try. Like I said, I struck out the first 2 or 3 times I attempted to get in my first couple of deals. So be prepared to wait around 1 to 2 years before you achieve any kind of success.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Ryan. We appreciate having you on the show today.
All right, I appreciate you having me.